Hello and welcome to my watercolor class. I'm going to show you the basics about how watercolors work. So I've got my watercolor paper here, 140 pounds. I've got my 12 pan palette set. These are the palettes where I'll work from. And I wanted to show you that as you want to lather this paint in order to pull, otherwise it's just dry, so you're adding a little water there to the paint. I'm moving it over to my palette. I can bring it directly to my paper over here, but you'll see, as I did in this spot here, I'm pulling right from the pan set onto the paper, and it's going to be very loaded with minerals, and I'll put those down on that paper. And you can see here where I painted earlier, it has this faded look here, and that's because the water has dispersed the minerals and you're seeing the white of the paper underneath. You can see here where the minerals start to collect on those edges. So that's really fun when you want to have a technique like this. You can use those minerals to pull on the edges, and as you continue to practice, you'll find that you'll get better and better at that. If you want a nice wash, you can put water on your paper first, just a tad, and then add this paint to it, and you can see how it's going to disperse more evenly with less strokes because it's moving around inside that water. And if I were to add a little bit of paint to this in a different color, you can see how it's going to travel. So the water is pushing the minerals, and you're getting darker, lighter, and it's a bit hard to control, but that's kind of the fun of watercolors. So the minerals are mostly pulling at the end of this brush, so the darker you want it, the less water you have. You would have to go up and down, straight up and down, to get a very nice dark line. And the more water you add, like I really want this to be light, getting a nice faded color. If I want it dark, I would do like this, or better yet, like that. The more I push with this brush, the more water is going to come out and the more it's going to disperse. So you can see I'll start off really dark, and then as I push, the minerals are losing their concentration as they go out, and because of the water, they're dispersing. So that gives you a little more control. And you can see here where I added that parrot to the ocean underneath that hibiscus. The parrot went on top and branched out and pushed a lot of that ocean color to the outside. So that's the way we're going to work with the minerals. And then if you go and add another layer here, it will start to pull at that edge. And also, if I'm going to clear my brush off, if I were to just push water into that area, it will start to push the minerals out to the outside, which is creating kind of a bloom. The other thing you can do is you can start to try to erase a mark if you need to. Like here, maybe I went too far. I can just kind of scrub at that. I'm not pushing the water in the barrel here, but I had a clean edge on my brush. And now I'm going to work at this. These bristles on these brushes are a little bit stronger than a normal brush, so it'll operate a little bit differently. And we're lightening that line, and the sooner that you start doing this, if it's already dry, it takes a little more to get off, and you may not be able to get all of it off, but you can at least lighten that line. If you draw a pencil design and then you paint over that line, you are unable now to erase that pencil line. So if you're careful and you kind of sketch here and you go up to the line, you can go back and erase your pencil lines if you don't want them to show at all or would like them to be lighter. You can go back and erase those because you did not cover them in paint. If you would like to lighten that, you can almost do like a stamp. Don't swipe it, just pull it up. And there we have this lighter look. You can also say, I didn't like this bloom here, so now I'm going to go back in with some water and start to pick those minerals at the edge of that bloom and move them around a little bit, dab at it. Maybe I'll come back over here and add a little bit more to make it solid. And when you do this, you might end up with a little bit more of a layered look, but you can at least adopt and change what you've done. You're not stuck with it forever. Those are a couple of tips and tricks so that when you're creating, you can kind of know how it's going to react. So see how I'm adding a little bit with the tip of that brush, some minerals right at that edge, and then they're fading as they come out. And that may give it more of a crackled look. I can also come back in here and add a little bit more of that hibiscus to start to make that look a little more organic. Add a touch of some green. And depending on how wet that is, it's going to disperse quickly, or how dry. If I added this here, or this one is very dry, you can see it's not dispersing at all. So in order to make it look dispersed on something that's dry, I might add put a little more water on there, and now add in that color so that it'll move. But if it's dry, it'll just pretty much stay where it is. And you may not like that look. See, it's not dispersing. If I add a little bit of water here, now I can get the paint to disperse. You use too much water and you can see the paper will start buckling, which is okay unless it's excessive. Then you may not like how that will frame up if you're working on a final piece. And I can always come in here and pull that paint back. You want to use a clean piece of paper or paper towel here in order to do that. And you can overwork your paper so that it'll start pilling because you've used too much water to push and pull that. So you'll just have to watch. Now see how nicely this little line is coming? And that's because I went and dabbed that brown right along an edge. Now, of course, this was already dry. This one is too. And another thing you can do, I put a lot of paint there. I can start to pull some of that pigment off of that line and distribute it. So it'll still have a line at the top, but I like to use that for, say, clouds where I might do a strong line and then use just water to sort of pull that pigment. If you wait for the line to draw, it doesn't work as well, but and that way it gives it sort of that look at the bottom, but I'm not creating the whole cloud with that kind of intensity from the bottom. So that's a little tip and trick. You can use that with any paint set you would like and try to play around with how much water and how much pigment you use, and then waiting for it to dry, semi-dry, or wet on what kind of results you end up getting after it dries.